Well, hello. Every gal needs a cowboy hat.
Scanning the room, you look for a familiar face. Everyone is a stranger. Your heart's racing, you feel nauseous. New plan. You meet 4 new people. Okay, 3. 2. You can handle 2. And then you think, I hate this. This just feels so fake. And before you talk to even 1 new person, you're looking for the nearest exit.
Okay. Crazy. Yo, who invited this chick?
My heart races when I walk into a room full of strangers too. Except it's not anxiety, it's excitement. I'm not thinking networking quota. I'm thinking, look at all these stories. And I get so pumped about talking to people that I don't know.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Hey, happy holidays. Look, it's time to bring out the ugly sweater. Yes, and wish everyone everywhere around the world happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Feliz Navidad, whatever you are celebrating in this wonderful season. My name is Gail Robertson, and I am Chief Curiosity Officer at GailNow. Now, I have a 3-step process, which is sign up, suit up, and show up. And this superpower that I use to help people use those 3 steps is curiosity. I also help manufacturers tell and share their story. You see, often in the world of manufacturing and also in other areas, people have these great stories. And as a recovering journalist, well, I know a good story when I hear one. Some people may say I tell a great story. But what is most important is that we share those stories. In fact, we have a duty to do so, not only for ourselves, but also to help other people to share our knowledge and, well, show up. And today, as we near, well, the year end, here it is, hard to believe, we're in December, and I got thinking about my own plans and looking at, the new year sometimes can be exciting because it's sometimes about, a fresh slate, starting new, all that excitement. And then sometimes by end of January, we crash and burn because we had all these ideas, all these expectations. And there's one thing that we sometimes forget to do as we're doing the planning and thinking and dreaming and setting goals. It's that one thing that my guest is the king of. Process. Yes, we're going to be talking about process today, but this is not just any old process. This is process that can be fun, that can be even easier than you may think. Now, the idea of process often scares people because it sounds like, it's going to weigh us down. It's going to be difficult. Okay, some of that may be true. It's not always going to be easy, but, and this is the big but, it can make a difference in the long term. And that's what we're going to be going through today, is looking at how you can show up when you first set out a plan with your process. So I'm going to welcome my guest now, the king of process, David Crysler.
Hey,
Hi,
Gail.
David.
Hi, Gail. So great to be here with you. I just have to tell you, every time I see your intro video, it just always brings a smile to my face. It's like, what's about to happen. It's going to be fun, and excited to be here with you today and kind of wind down 2022 and look forward as we roll into 2023. So excited to be here and to join you.
Well, thank you. As I was thinking about shows for this month, because I'm actually, my word for this year was grace. I always like to pick a different word. And one year it was joy. That was kind of an easy word. Although at times, it's finding joy sometimes when things aren't very joyful. That's whenever I pick a word, I always like to use my curiosity and not just look at the face value. So the word grace is all about, initially, how I could do to give grace to others. As the year went on, I was realizing it's also about giving grace to myself, allowing maybe some things that, if not perfect, it's still okay. And that's why I thought, as I'm personally looking ahead to the next year, I wanted to, think about what steps I'm using. And thanks to you, we've had some, I know, offline discussions here. Online, offline, not on the show, but talking about process. And for anybody that's heard me talk about you before, I've always said that you make process, much simpler than what often we think a process can be heavy, because it's all about as you say, sometimes too much about the technology. Okay. Before we start, let me, I thought I had my do not disturb, but I'm hearing a bling bling. So let's,
you're just so popular, Gail. Everybody wants to chime in and get a little interaction with GailNow.
Well, thank you. I'm always excited for the people in our studio audience that show up. Some people show up regularly. Some people pop in once in a while. And I know there's people I think out there that are watching that don't always comment. So I appreciate all of you. And I appreciate everyone globally as well, because we have people in different time zones. So let's go over to our comments. Now, the first one was mine. So I'm going to say, I said, post your process questions. Do you need some tips to start a new project, align new systems, figure out some HR issues? Yes, it can all go back to process. So if anybody does have questions, we now have David here who's going to answer some of those and provide some tips. So if you have a project that's you're wondering about, make sure you drop a question or even a comment. Inger says, happy Wednesday, everyone. Thank you. Inspiration from Inger. Mike says, thanks to Gail, my move from LinkedIn to YouTube has been seamless. All right. I did give Mike some tips about that, because I said, always good to have a backup. Oh, that's part of process too, isn't it?
That's right. Risk mitigation, we like to call that.
Oh, that's a fancy word. And yeah, so thanks, Mike, for that. And LinkedIn has been a bit glitchy when it's come to live. And part of my process for going into 2023 is that I am going to be shifting more to using YouTube and even hosting some videos on Vimeo, possibly linked to my website. So, but it's still using LinkedIn, but probably for different purposes. Okay, we have Inger says, looking forward to listening to your chat, Gail and Dave. Thank you. Inger often does double duty. She's sometimes working behind the scenes as well. So Whitney says has the fire. Hello. Whitney is a regular viewer. Yeah. Thank you, Whitney. You are, I love your content. I love your, although I am a little jealous. Now there's someone who has she has all her Christmas shopping done.
Well, I cannot say the same, but there's always next year, right?
There's always next year. I have my list now up there. So I have the list, and I actually have some things. I do have some things already, ideas and that I have, but I'm moving more towards services as well as not just gifts. Inger says, love the sweater. Thank you. This is a sweater I've had for a very long time, and I put it away each year, and I get to wear it. It's got like all the little, it's like little, very blingy.
Does it light up?
No, it doesn't light up. No, I do have a sweater that did light up at one point, but no longer. So, yeah, my son got me that. It's got a reindeer, awesome. Red nose used to like. So Whitney says, let's go, tuning in from Sugarland, Texas. Super excited for this conversation. Thank you. Then we have a little bit more networking. And Valerie says, yay, this is the best way to celebrate Reaching Wednesday. Oh, thank you, Valerie. So nice. Valorie's another amazing person. You always see her around at different live shows. The manufacturing hype girl, Katie, is in the house saying, hey, 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 sup, dog. Hey, Katie and I already had an earlier call on Instagram live or whatever, or Instagram, what do you call it? Where we do video call.
Reels live?
No, we did a video call, but has all these like, what do you call those overlays? Not effects.
Oh yeah.
Jeez. That just makes
I could only imagine being a fly on that wall with that
it,
conversation.
believe me,
So
there were some, yes, it was some fun, fun ones for sure. Mike says, hi, Ingrid. They let me back in the country again, but gone again next week, but I'll be home for Christmas. I'll be home for Christmas. Oh, by the way, we're going to have a show where we're going to do fun stuff like that, singing show tunes, right, Katie? Okay, let's see. We have more networking. We have Katie calling you the king. And she also said, oh my gosh, I love process. I need it when I set my goals. Yes.
yeah.
Because we're going to address that, because everybody has goals. We can all set goals, but without process and out what I call also objectives, goals can just hang out there and remain goals and never get to actually be action items. Tal says, hi, Gail. Move to YouTube is smart. Thank you. Tal is over at Cavalier Tool. Thanks for joining in, Tal. And if you are listening, you may want to hear some of Dave's going to talk about some of the HR tips and process and how some of the things he learned from moving from operations into helping other people in business with process. And because he has what we call lived experience. All right.
And the gray hair starting to come in to prove it, and the rest of it leaving. Yeah, I've lived experience.
Wow, we've got a lot of comments here today. Katie says, I'm always looking for tips on partnerships. So if there are any processes you happen to have for this, let me know. I think we'll talk about that later in the show. Stay tuned, because we're going to have some information about how you can join the club. If you want to be in the club, stay tuned. We're going to talk about that. Katie says 2023 will bring YouTube live for me too. LinkedIn better. I don't know what's happened over there, but people
I don't know.
Come on over to YouTube. Mike said, Tal and I were at U of W breakfast with the dean this morning, so we're even more smart. Okay. Tal, there better be photos coming. You'll know what I mean, right, Tal? You're listening. Katie said, I scheduled a day to plan my Christmas stuff. Does that count? Yes, that counts. That's a process item.
That totally counts. Yes.
Yeah.
I need like a process approved stamp or something like that, like one of those little overlays we can hit.
Whitney says, that's awesome. Have to make a process for it. Holidays have so many parts. I would definitely say you do need a process. See, I use my Evernote. So now I keep my lists in Evernote. So throughout the year, as I talk to people or people that I'm going to buy gifts for, I always go in my Evernote and put, so when they say something, I go, oh, I'm going to remember that. Yeah. So Evernote is a great place. Tal said, love stealing some tips. Yes, indeed. And because Tal is his fun title is manager of people, but he has his hands in a few different areas in the world of manufacturing. And we go way back. We know each other from a few different places in this community. So cool. That's great. Oh yeah. And Katie said that she, I actually thought she had turned her hair purple when she came on the screen. So, oh, another blessing. Bonnie is here. Hey guys, popping to say hello.
Bonnie.
Anybody not following Bonnie, please do so. Bonnie is amazing in what she's done with process about plastics. Just an amazing human being. How she's also, she's used process. We've talked about that when she was on my show, talked about using process in terms of her own health journey as well. And I will say she was someone who got me thinking about process when it came to my blood sugar. Was the first time ever in my life was a little bit high. And since I've been really focused back at the gym, I've got my numbers back down in the healthy range. And so Bonnie, I wanted to say that to you. Thank you. Because of your post, I got curious about that and decided during COVID, I wasn't doing as much strength training. So now I am. Okay. We've got so much. So Whitney said, that's a great idea, Gail, taking notes throughout the year and gift ideas. Yes. And Evernote is, I just have to get better at using my tags. So that's my list. Okay, let's jump in. David, let's first, for people who may not know, because we got right into uh, talking about process, but can you give a little bit of a synopsis of kind of where you came from and where you are now in terms of how you got to be known as the king of process?
Yeah, yeah, happy to. Thanks. So, I've kind of told the story, but I grew up in a entrepreneurial family. My parents owned multiple businesses as I grew up. So, as I tell that story, it's kind of, I learned from a pretty early age what it meant to work hard in your business. And growing up in that environment, kind of seeing that firsthand, I thought the easy and the simple answer was, go work for a really big company, as big as you can find, because obviously, they must have things figured out, right? Because that's how they became to be such a large company. And that's what I did for the majority of my professional career. I spent nearly 20 years working for a large publicly traded company that grew through acquisition. And it was during that time that I was very fortunate and kind of continued to get a lot of mentorship, a lot of opportunities as businesses were acquired or potentially other leaders were transitioning out of the company. I got the opportunity to go into different facilities and kind of learn about the people, the products, and ultimately do the things that led to driving additional value back to the shareholders. And part of that story was, as I say, I never really got the easy assignments. So there was always some sort of challenge going into it, and there were typically things like I didn't know any of the people. I didn't necessarily know the product line well or the equipment mix well. But what I did know is that, from a larger perspective, we need to figure out how do we, sell more stuff? How do we return additional value to the shareholders? How do we drive operational efficiency? And, it was really a kind of learn by experience and learn how you take and engage and empower people to drive those efficiencies forward, which is where I kind of came up with, breaking down business systems into the four key pillars that I use, which are planning, people, process, and technology. And for a lot of people, when you hear the word systems, and it's kind of what I talk about today. I help leaders in manufacturing create systems that free them to focus on driving growth and operating with excellence. A lot of people, when they hear business systems, it's kind of the immediate thought is technology. What software are we talking about? And the real problem with that, and again, I learned this from firsthand experience. I actually made a post just the other day about this, but early on in my leadership career, I was very technology focused, thinking that technology was really the answer to the problem, kind of no matter what the problem was. And I often would lead with that. I would often ideate alone because I kind of thought, as a young leader, I can recognize the problem. I can ideate what the solution is. I can create the solution from nothing. I can write my own code. I can create this technology. I can implement it all by myself, and I quickly learned, and thankfully I had a long enough runway to learn this, but I quickly learned the fastest pathway to success was by engaging the people that were doing the heavy lifting day in and day out. They knew what was slowing them down. I just had to figure out how to tap into that, how to take those ideas and kind of frame them around process, around systems from the technology standpoint to develop, what that system was going to be ultimately moving forward. Right. And that was really the kind of unlock for me, which is why I still talk about it today and kind of in the order that I do. So, again, planning, people, process, technology. You can't do one without the other. You can't implement technology without going through a series of planning, people, process, because technology is literally only created to execute the processes and to support the people, right? And you can't do either one of those without planning. So it's like, it was a very backwards way of kind of approaching problem solving. And I'm super thankful that, that kind of through that lived experience and, missed opportunities, poor leadership decisions, that I was able to come out the other side. And it's really impacted everything that I do today. The things I'm passionate about, I love talking about process process. I love supporting people from that systemization standpoint, and developing process, tapping into their know-how to again, to ultimately remove the roadblocks that they're the ones faced with on a day-to-day basis.
So you did, that is, yeah, we've talked with this because that is certainly an amazing journey. And I love those pillars because it is true. We've, the idea of people as well. People are at the foundation. If you don't have the right people, either, your management, your frontline staff, it's very hard to also attract more people in because
Yeah.
the people are often your recruiters, they're your marketing people, quite apart from your HR and marketing departments. So let's get into maybe what is a story that of where you encountered a problem? What's kind of a real life story that someone listening may say, "Oh, okay, I have been there," and that they could maybe identify with an example. Maybe it was regarding having a staff change or an operational change. Anything real life experience.
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of stories to kind of pull from that standpoint, Gail. But one of the things that always kind of comes to mind when you talk about challenges, and from that leadership perspective, and kind of pulling people together, and ultimately working yourself through a problem solving type of situation. I was responsible for a manufacturing facility, and we had a significant tens of thousands of dollars, right? A significant quality defect that happened, kind of on my watch, right? And so, at this point, I had been in an operations leadership role for many years, 10, 11, 12 years, something like that. Right. And so I felt pretty comfortable how to kind of, unpack what happened, how to address what happened in terms of, retraining and process development, kind of all of the things that you would expect to have happen in a situation like that. And as really one of the more impactful things that kind of happened throughout my entire career. But so we had this quality defect. I'll never forget having the conversation with the person I reported to at the time. And, here's what happened. Here's what we've done to, identify and ultimately correct the problem. We had all these meetings. We broke down, the breakdown in the process. And, we've developed all of these preventative measures and so on and so forth, right? We did all the retraining. We had everybody sign off on their training sheets and, so on and so forth. And, felt super confident, right? Having this conversation, be like, yeah, we nailed this. And it was like, so his response was, well, that's great, Dave. How do you know? I was like, what are you talking about? How do I know? I just told you, like, I literally just walked you through the last 15 minutes and told you how I know that, this isn't going to be a problem any longer. We solved this issue, so on and so forth. And this literally went back and forth like 3 or 4 times. And that was all he would respond with, like I pivot this way and say, well, what about this? We did this and we did that. He's like, well, how do you know? And the short end to this story is the fact of what he was trying to get me to recognize is that one of the things that I didn't realize at the time was we didn't do any testing. We took it to be true based on the things that we were doing from an effort standpoint, right? Like we put all this effort in. We spent hours dissecting what happened. We ideated together. We, put process improvement in place. We did all of the things seemingly on the surface, but how did we know? Well, we didn't. We never tested it. We never actually introduced a failure into the system to see like what's the result, right? And so, we did that. We introduced failure. Guess what? Didn't work. Didn't work. So my confidence quickly went from, like top of the world to like, oh my gosh, if I would have just let this go and kind of, relish myself to like, yeah, we did all of the right things, this for sure would have happened again. It just would have been a matter of time. So, it's one of those types of situations where it was super impactful to me because, again, when we take a look at breaking down business systems, when we think about how can we do things differently, how can we do things better to drive, efficiency, utilization, quality, whatever the thing is that we're talking about and trying to achieve, it really comes down to getting into this cycle of improvement and testing, right? That's always the end piece of it. How do you audit? How do you test? How do you introduce failure? How do we know that the thing that we're introducing for change, how do we know it's going to work? We have to test it. We have to, inspect what we expect. And doing those things is what leads to the biggest amounts of improvement over the course of time, right? It's the only way to achieve the goals that you've set out, no matter what the goal is. That goal could be, increased revenue. It could be, adding team members. It could be a quality initiative. It could be continuous improvement, process improvement. It could literally be anything. It's just all about how you develop that kind of initial framework to do the things that you're trying to do within your business.
And wow, that is a lot. I know Inger just wrote, she goes, oh my gosh, sounds hectic, Dave. Yes. I mean, because here's the thing, it is and it isn't, because I think you said something really important too about, the testing part, because I've seen this a lot of times with people that have a lot of, what I call book learning experience, even in the world of marketing, what should work or what theoretically works. But then sometimes when you test things, like also in different markets, when it comes to, for my world, right? I mean, which platform to use, what post to put up. And the best way to learn is to test out things. So I've learned, even with different clients, different markets, what will work best. And the best way to do is test that and then and then connect it back to your analytics, right? That's the other thing, is using data.
Yeah, I mean, to that point too, Gail, it's interesting because, we touched on it a little bit, right? But the human factor is what, influences everything, right? So if we're talking about social media, that's one thing, right? And you have to account for that human factor in all of the things that you're doing, which is why, it's kind of second on my list when we talk about systems. And really the only reason it's not first is because the planning piece to me starts with, that leadership aspect, which is people, right? So
Right.
it's already baked in there. But again, my point is just that no matter what we're talking about, you have to account for that human factor, because that at the heart of everything is what we're doing. We're building relationships, whether that's virtually through social media content, whether that's in person, through our interactions, whether that is, through process and quality initiatives, both internally and externally. Everything is about people. It all centers around that. And so therefore you've got to account for that in the things that you're doing. And again, that's one of the big mistakes that I made early on in my leadership career. And I can look back to and say that I'm very thankful that, I was open to learning, open to different experiences, and was finally able to tap into that, because that's what I really attribute, all of the success that I had throughout my career, and now, owning a consulting business. That's really what I have to hang my hat on these days. So.
And I appreciate that, the talking about people, because I do see it. I know for myself, I've been blessed with working for some great people that often said, hire the best person and then train them. Like, instead of always looking only for the person that has all of the right skills per se, because skills can sometimes be learned, like, unless it's like you're a doctor or something like that, you're not necessarily going to learn that but it is important to find the right people. And
Yeah.
I ended up in a role as a manager of a team that grew from about two to three people up to 10 people at a company where they hired me, and I had no management experience. I had no marketing sort of oversight experience per se, but I came out of that background of having those transferable skills, and ended up staying in that role for 11 years till they sold the company. But I always thought, and what happened was I kept growing and learning, because they knew by hiring me, I'm always going to be a continual learner. If I don't know something, I will go seek it out. And so that's really key when setting up those finding the right people, which, as you said, that's at the cornerstone. So I want to, Bonnie wrote, oh, I can so relate to the story, Dave. One of our biggest failures early on based around the same criteria. So that was Bonnie's comment. Thank you, Bonnie. I know Bonnie is another person that's really understands process. And Katie says, Dave, I started documenting all our processes as I am in them. I tell others that I am documenting our process for training new hires and to identify areas we could be more efficient. Wow.
Yeah. Huge benefit, you know. Yeah. And again, you know, you kind of brought it up early on. Often we can think of processes like, you know, like who's got time for that? Like, I got a million things to do. That's the last thing I have time for. But then what happens when we onboard new people and we need to put them through training, right? We end up sending them out to Joe, right? Or Mary or whomever. And it's kind of like, here, train, you know, train Susie, the new person. And it's like, well, wait a second, you know, how are we setting that person up for success when we don't have, you know, not just documented process, right? Because it's not enough to just have them documented. When's the last time they've been audited and updated? You know, is this still applicable with, you know, all of the rest of the things that are going on? So you want to give people the tools. So what Katie said is an amazing, you know, an amazing way to kind of shift your mind around the importance of process and documented process and up-to-date process. And there's so many tools available in terms of making it easily accessible and quick to search. It really, you could create your own, you know, kind of wiki page inside of your company to help people, give them the tools and support they need to be successful, you know, so they're not always coming to you as the owner, as an ops leader, as, you know, kind of just a key person, but they feel confident that they can find the answer if they need to, and they still have other people to support them. But I love hearing that. So amazing.
And document. That is so key. So thank you, Katie, for sharing that. Because that's, so as I want to, I do want to welcome, because Brian Gignac from Cavalier, we have a couple of people from Cavalier. He says, oh my God, I almost missed the data process. See, that hashtag is working. A little side story for anybody new listening. David, the whole community that works with David gave him this hashtag King of Process. And he's coming around to, I think, maybe using it, because I think we're just going to keep, eventually it's just going to,
I think you guys have like signed some sort of petition or something, like some sort of underground you know, initiative here.
Yes. Well, it's actually very above ground. We've done it all in the comments, which is, see the importance of networking in the comments, connecting, because what happens is, you know, this is another part of process too. If you're looking in manufacturing, or you're looking to build out your network, a lot of it's about that word. Dave and I talked about this before the show, is consistency, because that's another big part of process, is being consistent in whatever you're doing. And so we're going to get to that, but I want to also just we're going to lead up to talking about the club, because we're right at that sort of halfway mark. I want to talk about the Crysler Club and your new project. But just before we go into that, let's give a few high view, just short tips maybe on people that are maybe tuning in and going, okay, all this sounds good, but it sounds like, where do we start? And I want to just give a little bit of how Dave and I started to talk. One of the things that I'm doing as part of my process, even though there's so many tools out there, I'm working on a spreadsheet, just going with an Excel spreadsheet to start. For this is a bit of a passion project that I have coming up that I'm working on. And so I just want to maybe, Dave, as people are listening, or companies that are listening, saying maybe, well, where do we start? If we brought you in, what does this look like? Does it have to be, I don't know, like, because I think that a lot of times people don't know where to start.
Yeah.
I'm always a believer, you just put one foot in the other. You know, when I signed up at the gym and I just said, I'm going to just start going. But maybe for process around your business, there's probably some fear, uncertainty. What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that people kind of get bogged down when they think about process, right? And you talked about some of them. Often I'll see people get so consumed with which tool are we going to use, and how are we going to use that tool? And oh, I found another tool that does this other thing that I really want to check out. And it's like, no. That's why we leave technology to last, right? It's only there to automate the execution, to prevent additional errors and defects from happening, right? So let's just put that off to the side. So where do we start? Wherever we're at, right? That's always the answer. So maybe you have some documented processes in a manual, in a binder, printed off that's under, four other stacks of paperwork or on a workbench somewhere buried under dust. Well, at least you have something, right? So let's dig that thing out. Let's start reviewing those processes. Let's walk those processes with our people, right? And say, hey, are we still doing this? Does this apply? Is this still working? Those types of questions. So that's, again, one place to start. Let's say you have nothing, right? Like you're starting from scratch. Well, the secret to that is that you're not starting from scratch. You're doing something today, right? So let's just document that, right? Like, don't get so bogged down by thinking about process from the standpoint of like, oh, we have to create this thing from scratch and what's it going to look like and what tool are we going to put it in? It doesn't matter. Like literally my favorite way to start with a company is with a big blank wall and a bunch of sticky notes. You grab a team of people, you talk about, hey, here's the process we're going to talk about today. Here's what we're trying to understand. What are all the steps involved in it? How does this paperwork get handed off from this department to that department? At what point in time? And you just start putting sticky notes up there. The coolest part about sticky notes is that they're cheap. And you can throw them away when you make a mistake, or you can add to them when you forget a step, right? So that by far is my favorite way to start. Just get it on something, get it on a wall, put it on paper. If you love technology and a computer, there's plenty of things that you can document these process maps with. But again, I don't get bogged down by that, because you could go a lot faster drawing something with pen and paper or using sticky notes in a blank wall than you will ever do on a computer. And I love making it on the computer because it looks so nice and you can move things around and you can color code it. It doesn't matter though, right? Like if we're going for pure simplicity and pure, like, how do we move the needle? Get it up on a wall somewhere. Decide, okay, out of all of these steps then that we've got now documented, what are some things that we could look to eliminate? What are the things that slow us down? Is there a bottleneck in this process that we can identify? Maybe it's not a bottleneck, but we have identified that in this one particular spot, we take 50 steps 7 times a day, right? Like that's a huge amount. So if we could just move this thing, 45 feet closer to this other thing, like what could we do? What have we eliminated, right? So it's all about just documenting whatever it is you're doing today, specific to that, process, and then gathering the people saying, hey, what's slowing you down about this? Like, what could we do? Start brainstorming some ideas. So that's the best way to get started. And again, I highly recommend people leaving technology, documenting it, even long form, like just leave that stuff till later. Get it out on paper, up on a board. Let's look for improvement ideas. Let's get this thing moving. Like I'm a huge fan of kind of quick wins, because quick wins equals more momentum. And when you take, 3 weeks to talk about this stuff and roll out ideas and test, and like nobody cares. Everybody is like lost interest. Let me know the next time we do this, and it's like, no, thanks. Just let's get the ball rolling. Let's try something, like that to me is exciting. That's what gets me going. And that energy carries, not just in the specific department and with that specific team, it starts to generate momentum across the company, across the organization, really.
Mm-hmm. I love that idea of quick wins. And you're kind of like, as I was listening to you, it's almost like you're like the mediator for going in and because once you get people in a room, and I've done this even when it comes to, brainstorming for ideas around social media, around storytelling. I'm working with someone right now, an individual. This is helping her develop a speech and develop a few things related to work. And one of her difficulties is the fear of public speaking. So I said, okay, where's your easiest place to speak? Is there a small group? And she said, well, I could speak to my staff. Perfect. So she's going to work on a speech with my guidance, and she's going to deliver it to her staff. That's going to be her first kind of overcoming some of the fear. That's her comfort zone. And then, go on to preparing for the speech at a conference. And so quick wins, always great idea. And I like the idea of how you are listening, when everybody's in the room, you may find that too, that someone is, oh, you're doing that? Well, I'm doing the same thing, but I have a better method. And unless you start putting those things, I love the idea of Post-it notes too, something simple, something whiteboard. Bonnie said whiteboard is my go-to.
Yeah.
Whatever works. I think people, I like to, pen and paper when I'm planning out a rework of my website. So what I did was I sketched out what it is I want, because that's how I can think. And then I can transfer that onto an online format.
Yeah,
okay.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that's where, you kind of talked about being a mediator, and, really I equate it to kind of similar, right? Like that bridge building, because what ends up happening is that often from the leadership perspective, you hear things like, well, I'm really struggling with, this group of people not doing this thing, right? Or we don't do it consistently, or, oh, this group never wants to work, or never wants to do this, or they're always late, or they're, and it's like, there's probably some truth to that, but we need to unpack that more, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get out to the shop floor, or, in customer service, right? Like, it doesn't matter. When you get around the people that are doing the thing, right? Their perspective is often like, well, these people in leadership, they never listen to us. They never try our ideas. I told them 7 months ago that this was, a waste of time, and that we shouldn't be doing this, and, XYZ, right? And so bringing all of those people together, kind of focused around the common goal of like, hey, how do we improve this process? Like, let's talk about those ideas that are slowing you down. Let's find the, kind of lowest cost, highest probability for impact ideas, and let's try them. But let's try them like today, okay?
Yeah.
Because that's part of the problem from the leadership aspect, is it's often like, well, it's a good idea, but we got to really think through all this. We got to do this, and we got to answer that. It's like, no, that's where you lose people. Let's get out there. Let's try it. Maybe it's a terrible idea, but, until we try it and we see what the results are, maybe that piece of the idea is going to go on with somebody else's piece of the idea. And we're going to gain momentum throughout all of this. So you've got to be, from the leadership perspective, you got to be open to not just listening, but implementing, right? And you can't drag your feet on it. That's why I like to look for those low cost, high probability of impact ideas. Try those first. And what do you have to lose, right? Like, you can always go back and do the same thing you're doing today. Nobody's saying you can't, change it again, right? So what's stopping you from just checking this thing out and trying it? Let's move forward. Give people the power to, have some influence in what's happening on the day to day.
And I love that idea of, trying it. And, I, along with curiosity, my other superpowers, that I've changed careers now. I'm on about my 5th, about to embark on, well, it's sort of 6, but returning back to my roots as using my recovering journalist roots. So you can make change, and unless you try, you'll never know unless you go out and try it. I love that tip, and that plus the quick wins. And you are so right about, listening. But here's the thing I also notice is getting people to see beyond what they like. And often this does happen in operations, because operations is often about efficiencies. And luckily I've worked for companies, I'll mention Cypher Systems Group. That was one company I worked for that really was all about, my boss always said, like, do not ever say to me, this is the way we've always done it. And I just had this come across this recently with someone who said, well, when I was asking questions and I was told, well, we've always done it that, well, that's just the way it's always done. It's always done. And I stopped asking questions because I could tell it wasn't going to go well. But, you know, as soon as you start hearing that, that's like, warning, warning. And the other thing I know that's an issue is that, well, I don't like that. And I have to sometimes get clients to see it's not really it's not what I want. It's not what they want. It's really, you're in service to your audience, to your customers. And in some ways, in a lot of relationships, it should be, what is it, if you want this relationship to be successful, what is it that's important to the other person? So
yeah, I mean, the challenge with that always, Gail, is that, you know, in general, we're selfish, right? Like everybody is selfish and always looks out for themselves first. And so what you said in there, and the way to tap into that is, you know, and I used to tell people, it's like, look, I got to do stuff every day that I don't want to do. Okay. But it's to satisfy, you know, the greater good, whether that's a relationship with the customer, to drive business forward, whether that's, you know, because I report to somebody that's in senior leadership, executive leadership, you know, there's always going to be things that you've got to do. I own a business and have to do things I don't like to do, right? So I'm my own boss and I still have to do things that I don't like to do. Okay. So you never escape it, is my point. And when you can recognize that you're doing things for that greater good, because you are trying to build a relationship, because you are trying to grow, because you are trying to impact, you know, the entire department, product line, you know, team, organization, right? Whatever the thing is that we're talking about, you know, you get to move beyond that. I'm not saying that it's always, you know, puppies and rainbows, right? Because it's not. The reality of it is that even when you're engaging people and you're empowering them, you're still going to have some people that are the naysayers and the more challenging people that just say, that's never going to work. You know, why are we doing this? Right? Yeah, exactly. You know, like you're always going to have that. It's about how you navigate those situations. And ultimately, when you kind of hit those types of things head on and just take it for what it is and don't let it kind of dictate the rest of what you're trying to do, you're going to navigate through it just fine. And the majority of people then still come along for that ride because they see what you're trying to do and ultimately recognize that it's good for them as well. And then typically, you know, people that are kind of more of that mindset, they stop having comments to say and you know, kind of work itself out. So
well, I see we're nearing the end and I want to get into talking about the club, but I did want to just say, to kind of connect a few things we've talked about that I think are really important as people start to look at projects going into next year. I know it's what I'm doing. I'm looking at my project is really looking at my audience, the goals, what are the steps? So I'm taking some time, which will mean I'm stepping back. So everybody, you'll notice instead of this, I'm still using my 3 steps, but I do have the be curious, not judgmental. So my project going into next year, that is centered around that concept, because I think if we can first, whatever we're working on, if we get people to agree what the goal is. So if the goal is to all work together for the greater good, is the goal all to achieve ABC goals, then you put the process steps in place. Because if you can get everybody to agree first on those goals and that you all want to achieve it, then when someone says that's stupid, well, let's go back. Is it stupid, or is it you don't agree, and why, right? And then you can sort of go down that list. So yeah. So anybody looking at new projects, anybody stay tuned, because, you know, we're all going to be, as we head into new year, I'm sure there's going to be lots of new stuff. Okay. Let's talk about the Crysler Club project and let's just dive right into that. And we don't have a lot of time. So let's get right to the core of it. And because you are starting up something that I find is very fascinating, because it's about bringing people together to collaborate, to connect, and to work together, much like we're talking about today on this show, how we can all work together to help each other around process. So can you tell us about the Crysler Club?
Yeah, yeah, I'm excited about it. It's been something that I've been thinking about for quite some time, and but doing some small scale testing and having a lot of conversations around it. And it's as I kind of take a higher level look, and end of the year is always about self-reflection and where you've been, where you'd like to go. And the thing that really brought it together for me was this idea of, as much as we blame people in leadership and say that, a lot of the problems fall on their shoulders, especially when we talk about engaging people and creating systems and better process and all of these things, right? The other side of that we don't talk about often enough is giving the leaders that are responsible for those things, giving them the tools and the support and the community to help them, be able to drive growth, operate with excellence, right? How do we do that? How do we bring people together that are in those operational leadership roles, that are, having to appease people below them, that are on their team, that are in their organization? And how do they then appease the people above them in senior leadership and executive leadership? It's very similar to being a small business owner, where your executive leadership team are often your customers, right? So it's a bit of a different thought process, but the community that I am launching and really want to concentrate on building is all about bringing operations leadership folks, business owners together to learn from each other, to collaborate, to have a kind of a safe space, so to speak, a private space where you've got a group of peers that understand the struggles of motivating people and engaging people, and what does that really mean? What does it really mean to drive growth and to operate with excellence? How do we do that, right? There's the mechanics of it, sure, the how to simple stuff, but there's a whole kind of emotional intelligence piece around that. And I really feel that bringing people together to have those open conversations, and we're going to do things like have kind of ask me anything sessions, where you can ask me stories about my more than 20 years of various operational leadership roles. We've got a ton of other tremendous subject matter experts in the community to kind of support all aspects of those operational leadership folks and business owners. And it's not about a community to sell. It's not even about a community to monetize, to be perfectly frank. I really have no plans from that standpoint. It's really about bringing people together in a space where you can feel comfortable to ask questions, to challenge people, to share stories, to share wins. And, I really think that it's going to be a great tool, a great support system for people that are really looking to grow, personally grow within their operations leadership roles, within their business ownership, and kind of take their business to the next level, because you need these interpersonal skills and you need this kind of personal growth and development to be able to do it. It's as I look back, it's the only way I was able to be successful was because I was surrounded by great mentors. I was open to learning. I networked with other people, other peers that were on my level that I could ask questions of and say, what do you think about this? I'm thinking about doing this. Oh, like stay away from that. Oh, thank you for just saving me. So that's what it's all about. I welcome anybody that is in those roles to come and join. There's a link I see flashing underneath me, but I welcome people to come and check it out. You can learn about it before you join. No pressure to join, but would love to have you and love to start having some conversations around this.
And I like too that, as you know, I am a member. I've been in there. I really like the whole idea of, that as more people start to come in, there's going to be that way to connect. And I'm in another group very similar, as you know, around YouTube training, and it's been phenomenal to connect with other people that have already gone down certain roads. So I love that you are doing this too. That it's really about giving back. But I know from our conversations too, this is also how you learn, right? Because this is how, as consultants, that's the best feedback we can get. So, and right now you are waiving the membership fee. Is that correct?
Yeah. So, there's obviously a tremendous amount of value just from the ability to connect with other people, other like-minded people, people that are dealing with the same types of challenges. And yeah, at least until the end of the year, we're going to waive the $25 a month, fee to join, and hopefully get some new people in there and participating. But again, it's really about creating that community, collaborative support system for people in these roles that really want to work towards driving growth and operating with excellence, increasing operational efficiency, and all of the things that we kind of know we need to do, especially as we roll into the new year. So,
well, that's great. I would encourage anybody listening today to go. We'll drop the link as well in the comments, so you can just click it, and or you can write this down and go to it right away. Sign up. If you do, mention that you saw David on GailNow, and you get an extra bonus. I don't know what that is. Yeah. I'll just think while you come in, I'm going to be in there, and I will actually, if anybody has any marketing related questions regarding process, and because I've had some discussions with David, and he's helped me with some direction. And it's amazing how, just bouncing ideas off others is so helpful. And if anyone does have any marketing questions, they are welcome to ask me them, especially around strategy. That is something that I have been working on with a lot of clients in setting up, plans for long-term success as well, and using social media as a great tool. Okay, so Mike says, thanks, Dave Gail, for this insight. Processes are the important working pieces to have a successful plan. Very much so. And then he wrote, but wait, there was more. There's more. You get
the famous Ron Popeil pitch. So, yeah,
yes,
I love it.
Definitely there is more, Mike. So you may want to join. I don't know if Tal's still here. You know what? It is bright. There's great opportunity to come in and, start where you're at. And, okay. One last question for you is,
Okay.
how do you, well, it may not be the last question. I'm like Columbo. My former boss used to call me that because I'd leave. I go, oh, wait, he says, are you leaving already? Okay. So how do you exercise your curious brain?
Oh, that's a great question. I think for me, in general, to do the things that I do, especially around process and creating systems, curiosity is a huge factor. I appreciate learning. I've learned a tremendous amount of things throughout my lifetime. And I think it's just that ability to tap into asking questions. And, and that for me was something I somewhat had to learn, right? Like I shared the part of the story, my story in terms of, hey, I used to ideate alone. I used to look at technology as kind of like the end all be all answer for things. And so for me, kind of being open to, really tapping into the people that are doing the thing, right? And I had to do that throughout a lot of different opportunities because I didn't know the people or the process or the equipment. So it was like, it's one thing when you're familiar with it, but oftentimes I was unfamiliar with it. So it was like, in order to do what I knew I had to do, I had to become curious. I had to ask those questions. I had to engage those people. So for me, that's, it's really comes down to asking questions, not assuming you know the answer, and just being open to the conversation, not looking at maybe even, even from a networking perspective, right? Looking at somebody's headline and making a judgment to say, is this really worth, a half an hour to jump on a one-on-one? I mean, I could tell you from firsthand experience that had I not been open and curious about people, and throughout the last 3 years, 6 months even, right? But had I not done those things and been curious, I would have missed out on real business opportunities that have closed, right? Because of that. So that's, it really has to become kind of everything that you're all about. no matter what your role is, no matter if you're talking about kind of interpersonally or within business, if you're a leader or if you're somebody out on the shop floor, if you learn how to tap into that curiosity, it will take you far in life. So
Well, thank you. That is a great way to end up the show. Thank you, David, for promoting curiosity so well. Okay, I'm going to meet you back in the
okay.
green room.
Well, thanks, Gail. It was so much fun, and I appreciate getting to know you. And just one thing that I would say to kind of close out is again back to a little bit of what I said. You and I were complete strangers not that long ago when you think about it. And through other people that we mutually know is how we ended up connecting, and have developed a great friendship. We've met in person now. I mean, it's that is the real power of that curiosity piece. And had you not continued to promote that and me not been open to any of that, today wouldn't have happened. So many other conversations, so many amazing things, would not have taken place without that component. So I will leave you on that note and just say thank you. And, it's been a real joy to be here today and in general to have you in my life. So
thank you, David. Likewise. And we've had many other conversations where we've helped each other, and I feel very blessed for that. And you're right. It's all about being curious and being open to leaning in and listening and learning from others. So
yep.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. We'll see you in a bit in the green room. Well, as David said, we've had our paths have crossed all through networking, through connecting online. And for anyone out there that may be listening and uncertain about why social media is important, I will tell you one of the best things has been even if you decide not to do public postings, maybe as much as I do, or even as David does, you can still be active, listening when you hear a great podcast, when you hear a great show, even sending a personal message after the person's show, or even commenting on one of the posts. If you do nothing else but that, I can tell you, your life will be enriched greatly. David and I have had, I said many discussions. There have been other people that I've connected with, and in great part to do with, in many ways, when COVID happened and we had to move, we weren't seeing in person. I moved very quickly to online. I had already been online, but I just expanded it. So I can tell you it does work. So thanks everyone for coming out. Please drop a comment. Sign up for David's club. Do that before the end of the year. Get in without a membership fee, because I think as it grows and expands, it could definitely be worthwhile for everybody to get in there and connect up. If you want to reach me, well, you can reach me on just about any social media platform. You can reach me here on LinkedIn. You can send me an email at gail@gailnow.com. If you just search GailNow, you'll track me down some way. Please send me a message if you have any questions, comments, suggestions. And as I want to send everybody out after this show, I want to remind you, be curious, not judgmental. Not only is that something that I heard from Ted Lasso, it is also part of my branding and work as I go into maybe help change the world, because I do believe that good will always overcome. And whatever we're facing the world right now, when we're curious, that's when doors get opened and changes can be made for the better. Thanks everyone for coming out. And I'll be next week we'll be out of office, but I'll be back again and starting to share a little bit about what's in store as I move forward on my new projects. I'm working on process right now. Okay, thanks everyone, and have a great weekend, and see you when I'm back.